around here. There's a bunch of crooks around here. You ain't supposed to be in that jail, boy. Get over there, man. No, that's a total no, man. I come in.
Is my salary going up?
The Bahamian people got to wake up.
This is my 5 cents, and I approve this message.
Good evening, Bahamas. You're tuned into NB12 Weekend, broadcasting from Cable 12 Studios on Robinson Road. Coming up tonight in news, why a Freedom of Information Act may take a few more years before it reaches Parliament. Strong words from another church leader as government prepares to table the amended gaming bill. A deadly viral outbreak that's threatening your pet dogs. Plus, one mother's crusade to raise sepsis awareness. I'm Paige McCartney, and we've got those stories and more straight ahead on NB12 Weekend. Welcome once again to MB12. Despite renewed calls for a Freedom of Information Act, Minister of Education Jerome Fitzgerald says it could take the government 2 years to amend the current act or replace it with a new bill. He says a committee has been formed to advise the government on the way forward, asserting that the revamped Freedom of Information Act passed in the Senate under the Ingram administration was rushed. Bonnie Toot reports.
The Christie administration could present a revamped Freedom of Information Act in another 18 to 24 months, based on a recommendation from the Department of Archives. Minister responsible for the act, Jerome Fitzgerald, stressed that it's a major undertaking and told NB12 a committee has been set up to assist in this process. However, Fitzgerald suggested that the 2-year timeline is not set in stone, noting that the Department of Archives made the recommendation without the input of the Attorney General's Office and Ministry of Finance.
The timeline presented based on that was anywhere from 18 months to 24 months.
I mean, in terms of implementation?
In terms of implementation, yeah. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, people don't quite appreciate the level of work that needs to go to make sure the system itself is ready to handle it, and it's a lot of work.
The Freedom of Information Act was the focus of growing protests and national discussion last month. The Ingram administration tabled the Freedom of Information bill in Parliament in October 2011, and a revamped version was passed in the Senate in February 2012. However, it was never enacted. Fitzgerald said he doesn't think it was well thought out.
I think it was rushed for whatever reason when it was presented. That legislation just really was not, unfortunately thought out to the extent that that sort of legislation needs, because you need to consult, you need to get feedback, you need to make sure that it works for your system, and also understanding what the infrastructure that is needed in order to implement it. And I don't think that was done.
Fitzgerald has said previously the act in its current form needs close to 100 amendments or would need to be totally replaced. The F&M called this an excuse, insisting Bahamians will never see a Freedom of Information Act under the Christie administration. However, the education minister says the government has nothing to hide.
I don't think there's any objection from any political party with regard to Freedom of Information Act. I know from our side that there's no objection. I mean, persons may think governments have things to hide, but I mean, from our perspective, government has nothing to hide. And the question is just putting in place a necessary framework for it to work.
In fact, he says, government has set up a committee which includes representatives from the Ministry of Finance, Attorney General's Office, Department of Archives, and Public Services Department,
so that we can coordinate our efforts, because it is going to be a major undertaking. We expect that that committee will report back to me over the next couple of months, and I will then, along with the Attorney General, take the matter to Cabinet to lay out what we need to do as far as a legislative standpoint, and also to advise with regard to the financial implications, so that we can take that into consideration for the upcoming budget.
Additionally, he says a consultant hired under the Ingram administration in 2011 has stayed on to advise the government. Fitzgerald says the Christie administration will have to set up a new unit, which may require transferring employees from the public service or hiring new staff. He pointed out that a public education campaign is also required. Reporting for NB12, I'm Vonik Toot.
Well, as the Bahamas celebrates 41 years as an independent nation, a prominent pastor has charged that any member of parliament who supports the amended gaming bill is an enemy of democracy and that government's ability to hold a constitutional referendum has been jeopardized. Pastor Mario Moxie of Bahamas Harvest Church called on both government and opposition members of parliament to take a stand and reject the gaming bill.
Every member of parliament that votes for this bill will be an enemy of democracy in this nation.
Tourism Minister Obi Wolchcombe has said government will likely table the amended gaming bill by the end of this month and added web shops would be taxed retroactive to July 1st. Under the newest draft of the bill, web shops would be permitted to legally engage in cash betting transactions only and numbers games only and with domestic players only. Well, Pastor Mario says MPs who vote against the controversial bill would be sending a powerful message to the government.
The message that MPs who vote against this gambling bill, the message that will be sent is one of incredible victory, one of courage, that in face of this overwhelming pressure by the elite of this nation, that they stand with the people of this nation. The true supremacy of any nation lies within the power of the people. And if that is undermined, representatives will do grave injustice to those that elected them.
Opposition leader Dr. Hubert Minnis recently told NB12 the official opposition will not support the gaming bill, insisting the party will stick on the side of the people. On January 28, 2013, the majority of voters overwhelmingly rejected the regulation and taxation of web shops and the establishment of a national lottery. After going against the outcome of last year's poll, Moxie is predicting a low voter turnout whenever a constitutional referendum is held.
To move forward with a gaming bill, an online gaming bill, despite the fact that the overwhelming majority of persons voted against it in a referendum, it jeopardizes the government's ability to hold another referendum, because people are going to take the approach of, you didn't listen the last time I vote, why should I waste a vote now? You're still going to do what you want to do. It is highly unlikely that we'll see a constitutional referendum anytime soon. It's simply because the last referendum we held in January 28, 2013, the voice of the people is in jeopardy and democracy is being undermined if this government was to go ahead with an online gaming. And until that is resolved, chances are there won't be another referendum.
The referendum on gender equality was expected to be held by June 2014, but no new date has been set. Well, if you've got a family dog or puppy, you've got to listen up. According to officials, there's an outbreak of the highly contagious and fatal canine distemper. The viral disease that affects only dogs is spread through the air from a carrier. It's important to note, however, that humans cannot contract canine distemper. President of the Bahamas Veterinary Medical Association, Dr. Bridget Johnson, said already more than 100 cases have been reported, the majority of which have ended fatally.
Canine distemper is a very contagious viral disease, mostly in puppies and dogs, that is transmitted through airborne routes. And it is a disease that does not affect humans and it does not affect cats, but it is preventable by vaccination. Canine distemper is a disease that causes a multitude of symptoms in dogs, including respiratory disease, that includes discharge from the eyes and nose, sneezing, coughing. It also causes gastrointestinal symptoms like vomiting and diarrhea or a loss of appetite. And it also affects the central nervous system in dogs.
The virus infects the gastrointestinal tract, respiratory tract, the brain, and spinal cord. Common symptoms can include high fever, watery discharge from the eyes and nose, vomiting and diarrhea, hardening of the foot pads and nose, and seizures of any part of the body. Seizures that look as if the dog is chewing gum are unique to distemper, and also paralysis. Johnson said the disease is extremely debilitating for the dogs but can be prevented. She's encouraging all dog owners who have not had their animals vaccinated in the past month to do so immediately.
And we are asking that the Bahamian public bring their animals to the veterinarians locally so that we can vaccinate their animals even if they are current with vaccines. This strain of distemper seems to be especially virulent, so we are asking for all pets that have not received a canine distemper vaccine within the last 30 days to report to their veterinarian for a vaccination.
Officials say dog owners need to take this outbreak very seriously and follow all precautions so that canine distemper can be contained to New Providence.
There is no treatment or cure for canine distemper, and there are not very many options available to assist those animals that contract the disease. A lot of pets have had to be euthanized in the past few weeks because the disease can cause extreme suffering in the animals. It's an extremely debilitating disease. For those animals who are suspected cases of distemper, we would urge pet owners to keep them isolated and not allow them to interact with other animals until a diagnosis has been confirmed.
The outbreak means that dogs cannot be taken in at the Bahamas Humane Society until the outbreak clears, which could take longer than a month. Shelter manager Percy Grant said they have already had to euthanize more than 80 dogs, but the remaining 74 dogs at the shelter are doing fine.
We saw just yesterday where a dog was at home fine, and 1 minute and less than 2 hours or so, the dog just became very lethargic. They rushed it in. The dog started to seize and went to a temperature of 106 and had to be euthanized. So this disease is not playing. This is a very, very serious strain. The Humane Society has always been exposed to distemper over many, many years. We've seen it in bouts. This strain is quite different. And so we really are encouraged for the general public to take everything that they have heard today serious.
And again, the virus cannot be contracted by people, so officials say you shouldn't treat dogs any differently. If your dog shows any of the symptoms of canine distemper, immediately call your vet or the Bahamas Humane Society before visiting them. And in other news tonight, police are investigating an overnight drowning on Arawak Key. Authorities say a 31-year-old man drove his SUV off the western end of Arawak Key shortly before 2 o'clock this morning. Police say onlookers pulled the man out of the water. He was then transported to the hospital by EMS personnel, where he was listed in critical condition. However, the young man passed away later this morning. Police have not yet released his identity. 2 men are in hospital following a shooting incident that took place shortly after 8:30 last night in the Yellow Elder Gardens area. According to police reports, 2 men were in the Melbourne Drive area when one of them was shot in the leg and the other was shot in the stomach. The men were transported to hospital, where one of them was listed in stable condition and the other listed in serious condition. And police are also investigating 3 armed robberies that took place last night. And as usual, they're asking the public for assistance in finding those responsible. The first incident took place shortly after 7 o'clock when a woman arrived at her Twynham Heights home. Police say 2 men armed with a handgun were waiting on her and stole her silver 2003 Nissan Sunny license plate number 27070. The men sped off in the vehicle. The second incident occurred shortly after 8 o'clock when 2 gunmen robbed a man in the parking lot of a business on the northern portion of Soldier Road. The robbers reportedly got away with a set of keys and a gold chain before fleeing in a green Toyota vehicle. In the third incident, which police said took place shortly after 9:30, 2 women were at Roberto Street, Ridgeland Park, when 2 teenage boys on bicycles armed with a gun robbed them of 2 cell phones and then rode off. No arrests have been made in any of those incidents at last report. Stay with us. When MB12 returns, a mother who lost her baby girl, turning the pain of that experience into something positive. You don't want to miss that story. Stay with us.